Hey all, this is Andy from Tennis with Andy. So I'm experimenting with a few new things with the channel. So the first is going to be Midweek Mayhem. That's what I'm going to call it. It's going to be a grab bag of different topics with regards to tennis, whether it's doing string or racket reviews, talking about pro tennis, I'm talking about technique, and I'll try and release it sometime between Tuesday through Thursday. So the topic for today is the Enigma of Novak Djokovic. And it's a loaded topic, one that I could honestly talk for probably an hour on. I'm going to try and summarize this in 10 minutes. First of all, I'm going to start by saying this is a very biased opinion. I'm a Roger Federer fan, always will be. Whenever Novak enters majors, I root for the field just because I want to see. I first wanted to see Roger get the most number of majors, but given that that's the chances of that are increasingly slim, unless he has a breakout year next year where he wins 3 or 4 majors. I'm rooting for the field or rooting for Rafa to pull out to pull through and have the most number of majors. But Djokovic is interesting. He's a player who I feel has that desire to be loved in terms of the fans, and he's done a lot of great things for the sport, and he's truly a champion. And I think the things that he's done wrong, the 10%, 15%, however much that is, they get magnified, and he's sort of shot himself in the foot a few times with either statements or just his actions. Early on, I think it was sort of his arrogance on the court and in interviews, and I remember one of the early U.S. Open interviews where he really was antagonistic towards the crowd, and more recently, I mean, he's definitely turned a page. I think he's overwhelmingly more likable as a player. And the work that his work ethic on the court is amazing, and what he I guess from the bird's eye view, like without really knowing who the person is, like what you see on TV and what they portray has been good. So Novak, like it was a real warm moments when I saw him requesting for his kids Venus's autograph, and the way that he, I guess, is genuine or tries to be genuine, tries to really embrace the crowd. I think it's a good thing. And then you have the negatives. His tantrums that he throws on court, and I think I've seen it before, and I think it got magnified when it actually resulted in somebody being physically hurt. The lineswoman in the U.S. Open 2020, I believe. Then the whole debacle in Australia. And my personal opinion on this is that he should not have been given a medical exemption in the first place to play the Australian Open. But once that was given, the Australian authorities should have honored it, and you shouldn't have had this debacle of events. And it's sad and ironic that in the major where outside of Australian talent, outside of Rod Laver and Leighton Hewitt and everybody, the Australian greats, Novak should be there in terms of when you think of Australian Open, it's Novak. And I'm not sure what his legacy is going to be. I'm not sure what his legacy is going to be at the Australian Open. So that's still a question mark in my opinion. Now, like yesterday, I think that the SB awards were given, and I don't know the full rules for the SBs. I'm not sure whether they're based on the calendar year or the previous year, but either way, is a dishonor that Novak wasn't even amongst the nominees. Rafa won it, and Rafa, great champion, and nothing against Rafa. Obviously, I root for Rafa a lot. But if this was based on 2021, the clear best player in 2021 is Novak. If it was based on 2022, then you could say Rafa has been the best, but Novak should have at least been a nominee. So that's whether it's sports writers or fans, it just shows, it magnifies that sort of the public opinion of Novak. But what I really want to say today is sort of reflective of, in a way, one of the sermons I went to at my church. Don't worry, if you're not a believer, or if you're not a Christian, I'm not going to talk about Christianity. But if you are, I'll leave a link probably up here to watch the sermon. But the basic thing was, like, you don't really need to necessarily like somebody, right, to work with them or to learn from them, right? And that's one of the messages I got, like, in terms of, we see, like, I'd be the first person to say I'm a Roger Federer fan, number one, and number two, I root for a lot of different people. I also like Rafa. But if I were to watch anybody's strokes and try and copy anybody's strokes, without a doubt, it's Novak. And it's one where I feel like he has, at least amongst the men, he has the technique that's the best to copy. Obviously, Roger and Rafa have perfect technique on their strokes. But for amateurs who are looking for a model, like, let's just take Roger's forehand, for example. I remember about 10 years ago, I spent quite a while trying to learn how to do the, what's it called, the windshield wiper, right? So I just take my racket and do this at the end and think I was getting a lot more topspin. But in fact, like, once the ball has left the racket, everything that you do afterwards is pretty much inconsequential. Like the windshield wiper or the buggy whip from Rafa is more of a consequence of what's the easiest way to decelerate the racket given your previous swing path. And so I think for a lot of amateurs, they get lost in this, right? And they focus on the aesthetics and the glamour rather than the actual fundamentals. Novak, he's different in terms of his stroke production. Even if you look at the weight of his racket, the distribution is different. He doesn't necessarily wipe as much. Like, he doesn't use he doesn't sort of throw the racket at the ball as much. But he has a bit more of a classical swing path, especially on his forehand. And he uses a Western grip, which I don't necessarily advocate, but I mean, use whichever grip is natural. But the important thing to note is that he's just swinging through, and he's able to generate topspin by obviously his extreme grip or using his legs to brush up on the ball. But it's such an easy motion to copy in terms of his forehand, very repeatable, one that I think juniors and club players would be very keen or very smart to emulate. And then in terms of his backhand, I know there have been several videos about his backhand, and it's, to me, like, it's very straightforward, and I think it starts to really click for me this year. One thing that I really enjoy with his backhand is just the simplicity. Like, basically, he takes the racket. Once he knows it's a backhand, he shifts, right, closes the face. He does a really good unit turn and turn in from the core, right, not using his arms at all, not using a lot of wrist, and then initiating the swing with his shoulders. So that's, a lot of people have done videos that speak clearly to the actual technique that he uses. But it's just fairly simple, and it's one where it's easier. First of all, the two-handed backhand, I think it's a better backhand for most players. I never, at least in the intermediate level, like, you rarely see people who shine on their backhand. I think even, like, the way I say is, like, watching two-handers, like, I've seen some really ugly ones in the club level, or some ones that look pretty nice. I mean, very few that are like extremely gorgeous, but like the backhands, even the ugly ones, the two-handers, could be very effective. And the really nice looking ones could also be very effective. You don't see a one-hander who has an ugly backhand who has an effective ugly backhand. It's usually, if you see that it's ugly, then you're like, okay, I'm going to pick on it. So Novak, I think he's a clean backhand to copy, not very risky, and just real simple motion to use. His serves, again, his serves don't have the fluidity of like a Federer or a Serena, but it's one where, like, looking at him, he looks almost very robotic. And for me in general, like, that having that sort of emphasis on the kinetic chain and the transfer of momentum, like it's really good, because it all starts from the ground up, obviously, and then you see his finish where he basically has sort of the Sampras like finish with the bent elbow, but I guess not the same fluidity. But serve is good, volleys decent too, and overheads. One where, like, I think the lesson for amateurs is that even if you don't have the perfect overhead, which he does not have the perfect overhead, the fact that he's at the net and will just create pressure, and I don't think anyone's going to go into a match and say, I'm going to bring Novak to net and try and lob him. Like, that's going to be a bad strategy. So yeah, he's a mixed bag in terms of whatever you think about him. I mean, you're free to have your own thoughts, but in terms of players that should be emulated, I think he's right there, and one that I enjoy watching, one that I treasure watching his game, just because of how clean it is and how efficient his game is. So let me know what you think. Let me know what you think of this new format, and please remember to like and subscribe. Have a great day. This is Andy from Tennis with Andy. Play smart and see results.